21st of November. Good afternoon, and I hope you're hearing me now. And of course, welcome to the lunchroom. And we hope that you're having a wonderful day on Radio Caribbean International. It is Friday, the 21st of November, 2025, and we are now on to program number 1490 of the lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. In addition to 101.1 FM radio, you can also get us at our website, rcistlucia.com. We are streaming live as well on Facebook. You just have to search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International, and please be sure to like and share that as well with your friends and family. And don't forget, you can also call in this program to tell us what's on your plate today. It is 452-3046. And you also have the option of messaging in or calling in to WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp number is 724-0008. Now, I look back in time on this day, in the year 164 BC. On this day, Judas Maccabeus recaptured Jerusalem and rededicated the Second Temple during the Maccabean Revolt, commemorated since as the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. In the year 1906, on this day, China prohibited the opium trade. 1970, on this day, General Hafez al-Assad became Prime Minister of Syria following a military coup known as the Corrective Revolution. In the year 1971, on this day, November the 21st, Battle of Garipur saw Indian troops aided by the Mukti Bahini Bengali guerrillas defeating the army of Pakistan. And on this day in the year 2017, Robert Mugabe resigned after 37 years in power. His resignation was read out in Zimbabwe's parliament during impeachment proceedings. We now move on to our dish of the day.
Every bed in our hospitals tells a story of someone's mother, someone's brother, someone's friend. And when that story of care is complete, it's time for the next chapter, home. But too often, discharged patients are left waiting hours, days, weeks, sometimes months, not because they want to stay, but because no one comes. We understand life gets busy, but every extra day they wait means another patient, perhaps in pain, perhaps in crisis, can't get the bed they desperately need. So when the call comes that your loved one is ready, please be ready too. Pick them up, bring them back to the comfort of family, where healing truly continues. Because caring doesn't end at discharge, it continues with you. A message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program here at the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. And of course, it is nomination day here in St. Lucia. And that is in the lead up to the December 1st, 2025 general elections here in this country. Of course, that election could have potentially been called as far as November of 2026, so effectively coming early and into the term of Philip J. Pierre, who has effectively been the Prime Minister for the first time in his history and in the history of the country. And of course, he was able to go up against and defeat Mr. Alan Chasney's United Workers' Party in the last poll of July the 26th, 2021. And so by now, one would imagine that most of the candidates who are looking to vie for this upcoming general election have in fact gone in and met with their respective returning officers at the various sites across the island in the various constituencies, and have gone through presenting their necessary documentation and providing a deposit for the purpose of securing their right to be on the ballot once that election is in fact called. And of course, the whole idea of placing an X next to a name is, yes, election of the representative, but of course, we also do know that under our conventions of systems of government here in St. Lucia, we have been dominated by a party system, and in particular, two-party system. First, the St. Lucia Labour Party, in fact, being the oldest continuously existing party here in St. Lucia, being formed back in October of 1950. And the United Workers' Party, which was formed in April of 1964, coming out of a merger between what was then the National Labour Movement, a breakaway faction of the St. Lucia Labour Party under under Sir John Compton, joining forces with the then People's Progressive Party, which was generally seen to be a party of the middle and upper class of the time in St. Lucia. And since then, we have effectively seen the greater enthroning of the party system here in St. Lucia. And so invariably, the issue of who is the leader is a critical aspect in our system of government. So in as far as we are in fact electing 17 representatives, the issue of leadership is certainly a major factor in that mix. Yesterday, interestingly enough, on another talk show, I did hear the current leader of the opposition, the Honorable Alan Shastney, making a plea on behalf of his party that his party should effectively not be impacted, or the party should not be judged on what he may have perceived to have been done in the past. And interestingly enough, brought forward an apology for what he said may have been matters of misinterpretation. And so it was an interesting apology, because in as much as he was trying to apologize, he was not very specific as to what exactly he has now deemed to be issues that clearly led to his defeat in July of 2021. And so, of course, the big question is, here he is now portraying himself as a changed individual. The question is, how have you in fact changed? Have you in fact recognized the things that caused for that defeat? Have you taken accountability for those actions? And how are you in fact going to be addressing it moving forward? Now, it's an interesting stance, because what we have seen over the past couple of weeks is that we saw the United Workers' Party come out and they launched their 17 candidates, and they also launched what was supposed to be in their early plank of major initiatives, 7 initiatives, SOS 7 as it was dubbed. And that seemed to have gotten quite a bit of pushback. And we then saw quite recently in a national address by Mr. Shastney, just after the general election was in fact announced by the Honorable Philip Pierre, that he was putting forward new initiatives. And many of those new initiatives that he was in fact mentioning seem to have revolved about things that were already in train by the current administration. So we, of course, are now looking at a party that is also promising the issue of moving forward with the continued bonuses that have been provided. We're seeing him promising Well, even when the matter of the minimum wage came around, for example, that was a very interesting one. Because albeit the minimum wage in St. Lucia, I think, was probably about, if you look at what was on the books, it must have been about $2.25, I think, an hour or something like that. And today it now is at $6.50. But the argument being brought forward by the United Workers' Party was that's not enough. Albeit during their own their own time in office, they did not ever touch the matter of, in fact, bringing forward a new minimum wage. Now, for those, of course, who are aware of how the minimum wage principle should be applied, it really is something that needs to be dynamic. It needs to be sort of tracking the issues of inflation. And so you, in fact, are hearing quite often countries will be speaking about, and in Barbados they did so quite recently, to ensure that the minimum wage is in fact tied to the inflation rate in the country, so that it is not something that is static. And that's really important, because what we have is a situation where sometimes people get stuck with their salaries not really ever increasing, not even, and so you get these wide gaps, wide disparities, and then you have to have a major correction later on. And so the issue of, well, how often should the minimum wage be changed, of course, is certainly a matter that needs to be looked at. And certainly it should not be something that is going to be addressed every 30 or 40 years, as it appears in this instance existed. So, of course, we saw that issue. And again, many others which were brought forward in the past as to how Mr. Shastney has in fact become a changed man. Because we saw actions, for example, the matter of the St. Lucia National Trust. And in fact, it still seems to be the narrative that the United Workers' Party is to attack the St. Lucia National Trust at any opportunity that it gets. So has he, in fact, learned anything about an institution that has been established by an act of parliament? It's a quango. It's part of the framework for heritage conservation in this country. And is he going to, in fact, take responsibility for his actions in defunding the St. Lucia National Trust, which he found was receiving an annual subvention? And this was an annual subvention that the government had been giving the National Trust for decades, consistently by different administrations. And he came in and he absolutely brought their subvention to zero. He cut it completely. He didn't cut it by half or by a third or anything like that. He cut it completely for 5 years. Over, it would appear, the issue of a dolphin park, which he insisted he wanted to see established at Pigeon Island. So is that a matter that he's in fact going to take some level of responsibility for? Because, of course, there were a number of people who felt very passionately about this type of issue and other issues related to our patrimony, our environment. And so the question is, has he in fact, and is he in fact a changed man in that respect, in terms of how he views the environment, how he sees the heritage of the country, how he understands the patrimony of the country? Remember that line she brought forward? The whole, our patrimony is our credit rating, and was suggesting that, we need to be more like the Cayman Islands. Is that something that he is in fact reformed in his mindset at this point in time? Is he going to take a different approach in respect of investment? Because we saw everything and the kitchen sink being given to an investor within weeks of taking office in 2016. And of course, I speak specifically about Desert Star Holdings, DSH, a project in which we saw hundreds of acres of land still to this day tied up as a result of these framework agreements which was signed on to by Mr. Shastri and as well, interestingly enough, signed on to by Mr. Bradley Felix, who seemed to have suggested that he never read the document in question. And is he going to take responsibility for what has effectively been a calamitous situation of an investment project? A project which was touted to bring forward $2.7 billion worth of investment. And I'm speaking US dollars, that's what we were told, worth of investment into this country. We saw drawings and renderings of causeways on the Atlantic side of the island and heading to Maria Island, a protected nature reserve. And when that failed, we saw 23 islands in the sea being brought forward as a plan, and over the water suites being built in the Atlantic Ocean, and all manner of incredulous promotion. But at the end of it all, the country has been, and the development in Vieux Fort has been stymied and tied as a result of this project. And you hear the narrative sometimes, oh, this was investment. But money was being spent by the state to build a bypass road, to build incinerators so as to try to close down the Vieux Fort landfill. And to this day, we're still spending millions of dollars on the haulage of waste material from the south up to Dayglow. We're still seeing a situation where the Beauséjour agricultural station had to be closed down, and a new station had to be sort of established, one could say, in the area of Volette, with NIC monies going to purchase the property. We've seen a situation where you have a redesign of the Hiwanori International Airport to suit the developer's desire for more land in the area, and to ensure that he was more keyed into the first thing you would see as you drive out of the terminal would be his development. We saw the issue of the $24 million spent in the meat processing facility, a project which was the baby of the then Minister of Agriculture at that time, Mr. Ezekiel Joseph, funded by grant money from the Taiwanese government, the taxpayers' dollars from Taiwan, paying for a facility which today is a mess and cannot be opened. And it could not be opened because of this idea that you have to have a disease-free zone for the horses. You know, the horse health clearly became far more important than the health of people in terms of linking about our food security and the well-being of our people. That was the situation that we still are dealing with and grappling with today with respect to DSH. So has he, in fact, learned any of those lessons? We saw how he treated the CIP. He came in and he ended up creating a race to the bottom with CIP. And we've now have seen what has had to have happened in response by all the various islands in the Eastern Caribbean now having to establish a regulatory authority and establishing a code of common practice, if you like, and new legislation to effectively try to make the CIP much closer to what it originally was designed as back in 2015, by ensuring that you have minimum amounts in terms of the cost of applying for citizenship, other safeguards in terms of handling of the escrow accounts and all of these matters. Because what we saw was almost a situation of a free-for-all, and the price of the passports, the price of citizenship just kept going down and down and down, and everybody then started lowering their prices as a result of that. And let us not also forget the Black Bay land scandal. Because here you had a situation of lands that were owned by Invest St. Lucia, lands which were, at that time, remember there was a development plan, the Raffles Resort, and if we take it back a little bit, we then found out that those lands ended up getting lost right? That was a major issue back in the 2016 general election. And we saw those lands getting lost because they ended up as part of the deal for equity in the project, and it ended up that an Icelandic bank ended up owning the land, and the whole matter was a whole muddy mess with respect to hundreds of acres of land at Black Bay and Canals in the south of the island. And then the government came back in and reacquired the land at cost, right? And they had to pay millions of dollars to get back those Black Bay lands. And then got a new developer to come in to develop a resort at Black Bay. And then again here comes in Mr. Chasney, and he decides he wants to change everything up. And then he decides, well, you know what? You've raised money through CIP, because this was a CIP project. You raised money through CIP, but we're not going to give you the money. We want to loan you the money. And change all the arrangements which had already been in place. What happened to that situation was a matter of litigation, a matter which would have ended up in the courts. And the government, at the end of the day, had to reimburse the developer, because he was said, you know what, I'm not doing this project again. This was not what was agreed to, and he went his own way. And still to this day, when we talk about development in the south of the island, where is that resort which should have been, in fact, open by now? So if we are going to hear about a reformed individual, it would be good for that reformed individual to, in fact, identify how specifically he, in fact, is admitting where he went wrong, what he did that was wrong. And I'm not even going in terms of the rhetoric, because, of course, there was a lot of rhetoric that for many people rubbed them the wrong way, whether it will be about barking dogs or not listening to, it's not every animal that brays, it's not every, we're not even going there. And, but that was said. Narratives about flogging people, narratives about talking about telling people on the other side in the opposition they've lost their right to speak. That type of narrative certainly impacted a lot of people the wrong way. And so it really is rather interesting that at this time, with elections merely days away, the narrative that we're hearing is don't punish the United Workers' Party, don't punish the party I'm a part of because of me. And then, of course, also apologizing for what has gone wrong. And we have not even spoken about St. Jude Hospital, which effectively, in my opinion, has been one of the greatest travesties of injustice in this country. That you find a project that is in train, funded, nearly at the finish line in terms of completion. You have what it takes to finish that project. This is not a project that was at the foundation level. This was not a project that was in the pre-planning stages. This was not a project that they just broke ground on. This was a project that you found, that you were a part of, starting in the first instance back in April of 2010. Your government made decisions to go ahead with the development of that building, which you are now trying to label as an old building. You went ahead with it. There was a master plan that was approved, that went to cabinet. Dr. Keith Mondesi, the then Minister of Health, has spoken about that. It was approved by the cabinet. The whole plans for St. Jude Hospital were approved during the time of the United Workers' Party under Stephenson King, during that time. And you find this project now, when you come back in June of 2016, with the financing to be able to complete it, because the former administration under Kenny Anthony had negotiated, had gotten the funding through the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China, Taiwan, of $54 million, there was money to complete it, and you stopped that project at such a critical time. You could have easily said, we will complete it. If you think there were certain areas that were insufficient, if your argument was that, well, you know what, the accident emergency department, we think it's too small, could you not have then had a phase 2? Could you not have finished what was there, ensure that there was a commissioned hospital, and then move on to doing a phase 2? But that was not the approach. The approach was very, very different. To go on a witch hunt, to go looking all over the place with the police, all over the island, looking to get people to come to get the materials. And what has happened to these materials and equipment? To this day, we still cannot find out what happened to all the laundry equipment, what happened to all the kitchen equipment. Now, I hope, of course, it is a matter that the special prosecutor is actively investigating, because I don't know what he's doing. He's an independent individual, but I hope it is a matter that he is going to be looking at, because it is a real issue. But the most important thing in all of this situation is that you have a population in the South that is getting a substandard healthcare treatment, secondary healthcare. And that is having a rollover effect on healthcare across the country, because we have a bed shortage. We have a St. Jude, which is supposed to be, right now it's operating at about 45 beds. We heard from the CEO telling us that they really need to be at about 90 beds. And so when you have a bed shortage in the South, what do you think is going to happen? It's more pressure at OKEU. So you are now pushing the narrative that there's a problem with healthcare. Oh, healthcare is so bad. But you had the opportunity for 5 years and 2 months to ensure that St. Jude could have been completed, because you found a project that was near completion. And so to come now with the narrative of healthcare being so bad, what is your responsibility within that matter? You have a major issue in terms of coming forward. It is effectively being hypocritical, because you are clearly not addressing the fact that we should have been far better off right now with respect to the healthcare of our country. And it matters. People's lives are being impacted in that, literally. So, of course, we all want to be able to see, come next week, Monday, a free and fair election. We want to ensure that everybody is getting that opportunity to go out and vote using their conscience and vote using their good intellect, which they have been given by the grace of God. We also want to ensure, I would like to believe, that the players out there are not encouraging actions that are impacting people, the campaigners, the politicians. There is no space in this country for hatred. There is no space in this country for violence. There is no space in this country for destruction of other people's property. And so it is certainly very important that the kind of activities of destroying billboards and taking out flags and those types of really, really petty actions by whoever is doing it, by whatever side. And of course, let's just say, there are people out there who are sometimes known to be anarchists, right? There'll be people who always look to take opportunity. So they'll see something's going on and they say, you know what? I'm going to cause trouble, right? So we're not saying necessarily that it is people who are on one side or the other who are doing these things. There may be other people who are doing them for their own silly reasons. But whatever it is, we really don't need this at this time. And so let us hope that we can see, and insist, of course, that we can see a free and fair general election so that this country can certainly get back to peace, get back to where we need to go for the future. That's our dish of the day.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Every bed in our hospitals tells a story of someone's mother, someone's brother, someone's friend. And when that story of care is complete, it's time for the next chapter, home. But too often, discharged patients are left waiting hours, days, weeks, sometimes months, not because they want to stay, but because no one comes. We understand life gets busy, but every extra day they wait means another patient, perhaps in pain, perhaps in crisis, can't get the bed they desperately need. So when the call comes that your loved one is ready, please be ready too. Pick them up, bring them back to the comfort of family, where healing truly continues. Because caring doesn't end at discharge, it continues with you. A message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs.
It's now time for our weather report, brought to you by Island Style.
Last year, boy, problems to get shipment of tiles in time for Christmas. This year, Island Style has enough tiles in stock to cover the whole of St. Lucia. And with our Christmas sale starting now, every tile is on sale. Island Style has massive stock, the widest variety, and the very best sale prices on quality tiles. And natural stone in St. Lucia. Great deals on beautiful bathroom faucets, vanities and fixtures, tiling tools and accessories. Don't fall for no gimmicks anywhere else. Island Style's annual Christmas sale is unbeatable. Tiles for miles. Deals as far as the eye can see. Start your car, ride your bike, hop on a bus, and hurry down to Island Style Town and Bath now. Castries, Rodney Bay, and Viewford. Check Facebook for more details.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And the forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from between the east and northeast. Near 15 miles per hour or 24 kilometers per hour. Weather fair to partly cloudy skies with a few isolated showers. Forecast for the Lesser Antilles. Fair to occasionally cloudy skies with widely scattered showers. The tropical weather outlook. The Atlantic high pressure system will maintain light to moderate easterly winds to northeasterly winds across the Lesser Antilles during the next few days. Patches of low-level clouds drifting with the wind will cause a few brief showers over parts of the region during the forecast period. Tropical cyclone formation is not expected over the tropical Atlantic during the next few days. And that is your weather report, brought to you by Island Style.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Last year, boy, problems to get shipment of tiles in time for Christmas. This year, Island Style has enough tiles in stock to cover the whole of St. Lucia. And with our Christmas sale starting now, every tile is on sale. Island Style has massive stock, the widest variety, and the very best sale prices on quality tiles and natural stone in St. Lucia. Great deals on beautiful bathroom faucets, vanities and fixtures, tiling tools and accessories. Don't fall for no gimmicks anywhere else. Island Style's annual Christmas sale is unbeatable. Tiles for miles. Deals as far as the eye can see. Start your car, ride your bike, hop on a bus, and hurry down to Island Style Town and Bath now. Castries, Rodney Bay, and Viewford. Check Facebook for more details.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. It's about 1:45 here in St. Lucia. And of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. You can also call into our WhatsApp number. That is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. Now, of course, as I said, we are on an election countdown, looking at how things are going all over the country. Lots of meetings being held all around, local meetings, national meetings. And of course, the atmosphere right now has been pretty festive with motorcades and almost a bit of a carnival-like experience, even in the city of Castries and other places where individuals have been coming forward to put their necessary documents to be registered to become candidates. And of course, it was not always like this. There was also a time when, prior to adult suffrage, prior to 1951, you in fact needed to have, well, you needed to be literate, and you also needed to own property. You needed to show proof that you owned property here in St. Lucia if you wanted to put yourself up for elections. And of course, in those days, there was a limited suffrage, because then that too had a certain requirement in terms of either property or assets that you actually had to have before you would have been a registered voter. So it really prevented the ordinary person, a person without means, from being able to cast their vote. And it really showed how systems, albeit even after emancipation, there were a lot of systems that effectively kept people oppressed and kept them unable to actually take control over their own future, their own affairs. And of course, we have seen a tremendous amount of change. So now we're speaking about today the right to vote. It really is something that should be seen as a duty, and we should be taking it as a very serious matter. Because at the end of the day, it's our country. We don't have well, at least I can speak for myself, I don't have a vote any other place in the world except here in St. Lucia. And it's that one vote that we are all given. And at the end of it all, that one vote really is our right to say that we are going to be holding our government to account, and that we want to be able to ensure that there is the best possible government, or the better government, if you prefer even, being elected at the end of the day. So it is certainly a very important ask and task that we all have to take on. And we have heard the suggestions of low voter turnouts over the years, or falling voter turnout. Part of it, of course, we do know is the issue of that voters list being somewhat inflated. And the reality is, people are traveling more. There are a lot more people who might be out of St. Lucia than before in earlier elections. You see St. Lucians going out for business, for education. No doubt there'll be hundreds of students, St. Lucian students, who will be around the world right now who won't be able to get an opportunity to vote because they're out of St. Lucia. And likewise, people on vacation don't have that opportunity to vote. And so that also means that we should certainly be thinking about the voting process as well, and whether it has come, that it is now time where we should be considering early voting, or absentee voting, absentee ballots, that sort of arrangement for persons who are in fact out of the country. Because otherwise, we of course hear that narrative sometimes that political parties may even engage in the purchase of tickets to fly in people who they may believe might vote their side or their way. And of course, that can go either way regardless. So that certainly is one of the matters that we would like to hope could be actually as seen as an innovation in terms of improving our access to democracy here in St. Lucia. Of course, the number to call in, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And the WhatsApp number, 724-0008. Now, we've been hearing a lot about yellow is the code coming out of the United Workers' Party. And that actually was not an original campaign line being put forward there. And if you go back to the recent election in Trinidad and Tobago, in fact, they used that very same tagline, yellow is the code. And that was being utilized by the current government, the government that won, the United National Congress, the UNC, led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar, who is now the Prime Minister. And that narrative is, of course, now being imported into St. Lucia. And quite recently, we saw a video that was in circulation in this regard. And it would involve a Trinidad, as it is known, Trinidad artist by the name of Macamillion, performing a video in the streets of Castries, I believe, in the evening, dancing and whatnot. And of course, we know that parties are going to be utilizing artists from, of course, we would hope that they'll be utilizing primarily local artists, but we do hear sometimes that governments or parties fly in artists for the purpose of trying to stir up interest. But what is a little concerning, though, is the current alignment with respect to Trinidad and Tobago and the current UNC administration. Because that administration right now has placed Trinidad and Tobago into a very precarious situation in respect of its relations with other CARICOM countries, as well as that of Venezuela. And over the past couple of weeks, we have been seeing how that has been playing out with the rising militarization going on within the Caribbean Sea. The United States of America, of course, you may have heard already, has brought into the Caribbean the USS Gerald Ford. It is one of the 11 aircraft carriers that the United States owns, but it is in fact not just, it's the most recent, and it is the largest aircraft carrier which they own, and they have brought it into the Caribbean. And we're also seeing quite a bit in terms of training, military drills happening in collaboration with the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we've also heard of requests being made of other islands like Grenada for the use of those islands for activities that are military in nature. And so one really wonders, is there going to be a similar stance being taken with this idea of yellow is the code? Because quite often, when we speak about codes, we're speaking about warfare. The whole idea about codes and code breakers, if you think back, there's a very lovely movie, two actually, Enigma and Imitation Game, I think it's called, in which it looks at the gentleman who in fact is known as the founder of computer science, Alan Turing. And he was effectively the man to break, and his work and his team of cryptanalysts were the ones who managed to break the Nazi code during World War II. And of course, that was a game changer in terms of warfare, because once you, of course, were able to intercept the codes that were being utilized, you were then able to access the information of the Nazis, which really assisted tremendously in changing the outcome, changing the ability of the Allied forces to actually win the war. They were able to know the positions of Nazi assets and military equipment. Now, making this point because we're seeing what is happening right now, and actually there's a very nice piece coming out of the Wall Street Journal. I believe we actually have that clip. Oh, we're not able to get it. Okay, sorry about that. I'm now being told that we are not able to actually bring forward. We have an issue with respect to our platform here, which really went into the current situation over in Trinidad and Tobago, and so we will in fact try to see if I can get that again coming out of the Wall Street Journal. And should I send it to the same platform? Okay, let me try to do that again. Oh, okay. There we go. Right, but in the meantime, we will in fact also want to touch on the issue of foreign policy, because really we don't often get an opportunity for governments to actually enunciate what their foreign policy positions are going to be. And sometimes these actually have some very major implications moving forward. In fact, that point was being made by Dr. Kenny Anthony at the handover ceremony down in Vayfor for St. Jude Hospital, that had it not been for that shift towards regularizing the diplomatic status between St. Lucia and Saudi Arabia, that door that had opened up in terms of financing for St. Lucia from the Saudis would not have been possible. And so it certainly is something that we do have to take seriously in terms of our national development, and how we in fact can ensure that we are going to make wise decisions to be able to increase the support that we can get from other countries that are willing to make the investment here in St. Lucia. But I think we actually have that clip available now, and let's see if we can actually have a run of it at this time.
Venezuela to meet its energy needs.
Okay, can
but
we start
now
from
tensions
the
are running
right?
high
So we're going to start that from
President Trump
the start. Okay, great.
The tiny Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago sits just 7 miles from Venezuela at its closest point. And right here is the Dragon gas field, which Trinidad has sought to develop in collaboration with Venezuela to meet its energy needs. But now tensions are running high between the neighbors as President Trump ramps up the pressure on Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro.
He has not been good to the United States.
Over the past month, U.S. Marines have been training in Trinidad, leaving many to wonder if the U.S. military could use Trinidad and Tobago as a staging ground for a wider conflict. So here's how this small island nation came to play a significant role in the U.S.'s Caribbean campaign and what its support for Washington could mean for the future. While other Caribbean nations have spoken out against the U.S. campaign in the region, Trinidad's Prime Minister has supported Washington's moves. A few weeks after the U.S. began carrying out strikes on alleged drug boats, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar and Secretary of State Marco Rubio met to discuss regional security and counter-narcotics cooperation. According to a readout of the meeting, Rubio also expressed support for Trinidad's Dragon gas proposal and steps to ensure it will not provide significant benefit to the Maduro regime. That's the gas field that Trinidad shares with Venezuela, and most of the gas is on Venezuela's side. A few days after that meeting, the U.S. granted Trinidad an OFAC license, allowing it to engage with Venezuela on the gas deal without being affected by U.S. sanctions. And around that very same time, open source researchers began posting about strategic U.S. aircraft near the country. They also posted satellite imagery revealing a U.S. Special Operations ship off Trinidad's coast. By late October, the buildup was even more public. Trinidad welcomed a U.S. warship at its port and launched joint defense drills with these elite U.S. forces from the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. The moves have infuriated the Maduro regime.
Esa señora está permitiendo que Trinidad y Tobago sea utilizado como un portaaviones contra Venezuela.
Venezuelan officials have lashed out against Trinidad's prime minister, declaring her persona non grata and criticizing her for allowing the country to be used as a, quote, aircraft carrier against Venezuela. In November, the U.S. Marines returned for more training. Now, central to all of this is a status of forces agreement that the U.S. has with Trinidad and Tobago that was strengthened at the end of last year. It allows U.S. troops to operate in the country under certain rules. In the past, cooperation has typically focused on disaster response and humanitarian efforts. But this Prime Minister, who was elected on a law and order platform, has taken things to a new level. That's because in recent years, Trinidad and Tobago's murder rate has skyrocketed. Last year was the country's deadliest year on record, and the violence was closely related to gang activity.
I can tell you one thing, we stopped all drugs virtually from coming in by sea.
That helps explain why, even amid news reports of bodies washing ashore on Trinidad beaches and citizens being killed in U.S. airstrikes, the government has supported Trump's campaign, saying the operations are ultimately aimed at allowing the region to be a true zone of peace where all citizens can in reality live and work in a safe environment. The rising tensions have sparked fear in the country, where fishermen are scared to go out on the water and citizens fear retribution from their neighbor. Trinidad is already paying a price. In October, the Maduro regime suspended energy cooperation with the country.
Suspendido todo.
While Trinidad's government hasn't said whether it supports a possible U.S. effort to seek regime change in Venezuela, analysts say it's clear that the country's waters, airspace, and land could play a key role in whatever comes next.
And that piece coming from the Wall Street Journal. And of course, it is quite likely that if we are going to be seeing any change in administration, the big question is from Mr. Shastny is whether, in fact, he is going to take the title, which he quite often was called as Tropical Trump, very seriously on this situation that is developing in the Caribbean Sea and between Trinidad, in this instance, Venezuela, and of course the United States. And there has been a declaration of the desire to see a zone of peace in the Caribbean. And what we are of course seeing is heightened militarization, both on the side of Venezuela and some of its own allies, like Russia, as well as of course what is going on with respect to the U.S. and their own fleet and operations. This hopefully will not end up in an all-out conflict, because that can never be a good thing for the Caribbean. We're already seeing the challenges of disruptions in terms of logistics as a result of Hurricane Melissa and what that did to supplies coming out of the port of Kingston, Jamaica. And if you now have a situation where you've got fleets in the Caribbean Sea, you've got warfare going on, you've got, are we going to be expecting that our tourism industry is going to continue to be as buoyant as it is right now? Are we going to continue to expect to see the same routes for our cruise ships? Are they still going to be coming this way? Because, I mean, we're all going to be painted in the same brush. That's for sure. And it is certainly not going to help in terms of the image of the Caribbean as a beautiful, peaceful paradise. And so we certainly need to be thinking about this situation very, very seriously and the implications that it may have for our economic sustainability. We'll have to end it here for today and for the week. And of course, we do wish you a wonderful weekend, and stay safe and enjoy it. Be responsible, of course, on the roads. I'm your host, Calix Shaw Jr., saying goodbye.